Welcome to Physical Therapy. My name is Kurt.
And I'm Sam.
I'm Bobby.
Later on in this episode, Sam and I are going to be breaking down the 1988 horror remake of The Blob. There will be a timestamp in the description of this episode if you want to skip right to that. But first, how were your weeks? Bobby, did you run the marathon this morning?
Oh, I got so envious of all the runners. No, I didn't. I accidentally met up with friends at one point on the marathon track, and we got a lovely front row outdoor seat with coffee and mimosas watching the marathon. It was great.
Perfect. How often do you run it?
I've only done the LA marathon once, but I do half marathons. I'm itching to do another because the thing is the training takes focus and I don't have focus, but if I do it with someone, I will train. And then it's no problem.
One year, Kimberly and I went down to the marathon to see our friend Jane. We knew she was going to be running past our street. And we went down and right when we got there, we saw Jane, screamed, cheered her on. And then 2 minutes later, Bobby ran by and we had no idea. I don't even know if we knew you were running, but we were like, Bobby!
I don't know if I knew I was running at that point. So
you were networking, just chatting with three people.
Oh,
it was
the best. I don't the running is incidental. I could run forever. It's more just am I bored running this long? But the marathon is so great because it's stimulation for hours and people give you free candy and juice. It's great. It's like giving blood. You get little cookies and juice after you do it.
Yeah, you can eat whatever you want after.
People treat you like royalty. It's never felt better.
Sam, what's new?
Nothing, man. Just been a busy week here in Old Portland. The sun came out, and a lot of people, when the sun comes out in Portland for the first time after the winter, the city becomes a living nightmare. So just dealing with that. But watched some good flicks this week, and I treated myself to a couple pre-orders, which I'm really excited about.
Do you guys feel different now that you're famous and hosting a podcast?
I'm a completely different person than I was a week ago.
There's a weight to the fame right now that it's inescapable, but thrilling at the same time. So I'd say absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, how was recording with Sammy and them?
Really fun. Really fun. I had the chance to go on Too Scary Didn't Watch, which is our friends Sammy and Emily and Henley's podcast, where Emily and Henley are too afraid to watch scary movies, so Sammy watches it for them and does a recap, and I got to be the guest and pick the movie of the week. I chose my childhood favorite film, Joyride, which was really fun.
Hell yeah, dude. Joyride rules. If my timing is correct, I believe I saw a double feature of Don't Say a Word with Michael Douglas and Brittany Murphy and Joyride the night they came out.
As in they were released on the same day?
It was either that or Don't Say a Word had come out a week before, but was still in theaters. And I definitely saw them back to back.
Yeah.
When I was probably in 8th grade.
Yeah, the 8th grade for sure. They seem to be right at the same time in my memory.
Yeah. What a fucking double feature, dude.
So yeah, if anybody is listening to this episode because they heard me on Too Scary Didn't Watch, welcome. Thank you for being here. I want to start today with a question for you two about your collections. Kim and I went to our friend's place the other night who are physical media fans, and they have a nice little collection. And we walked in and it was kind of one of the first things I saw when I walked in the door, and we'd never been over to their house. And so I immediately just rudely walked right up to their shelf, and I noticed that their collection was chronological.
Whoa.
So the first thing they had, I think top left on their shelf was the Eureka Cabinet of Dr. Caligari release. What year is that? Does anybody know?
1920.
1920.
So it was Cabinet of Dr. Caligari on top left, and bottom right was Oppenheimer. And it was a pretty big shelf. They have a nice collection. So I know the answer a little bit with Sam, especially. Bobby, I've picked through your various spaces.
Spaces, places, faces. Yeah.
We heard a little story about your closet tragedy recently.
Oh.
So my question, I guess, is all three of us have pretty robust Blu-ray, 4K, DVD, all combined physical media collections. I'm curious, how do you guys organize your collection?
Currently, I just moved my movies from one room to another, which I'm pretty excited about. And I have it set up by my boutique labels are separated out from kind of like your more mass-produced Warner Brothers or Sony releases or other studios.
Sam, can you, for the listeners who may not be familiar with what a boutique label is, can you kind of just explain that?
Sure. So those are going to be like your smaller labels like Criterion Collection or Arrow Video. These are labels that license rights to movies and then put out that movie on physical media. Criterion Collection started with Laserdisc and has pretty much gone through every home media format since then. And now we have a lot of smaller companies like Vinegar Syndrome or Severin who are buying up rights to European or other foreign releases or small, really small independent releases and giving these movies a second life on physical media. And so some of these movies have been really hard to find. Some are, as Bobby pointed out last week, Witness, which is a movie that people have seen and not necessarily hard to find. But yeah, a boutique label is a smaller company that licenses the rights to movies and puts them out on Blu-ray and 4K at this point.
Yeah, Criterion Collection is definitely the first one I was ever aware of.
Very much so for me as well.
A boutique label puts a ton of consideration into the packaging and the special features. So they're these really kind of gorgeous collector's items, really. And so that is, very addicting to people like us who collect movies. But I think my favorite part about the idea of a boutique label is they become sort of like a trusted brand to recommend titles to you, especially Criterion. Like that's been my relationship with them is I find out about so many movies because they announce it's going to come to their catalog. But Sam, you're saying your shelf is arranged by boutique label?
Yeah, it is. So it's alphabetical by label name. So Arrow starts.
Arrow, okay.
And then it's alphabetical by title within the boutique label. Arrow's a little bit different because they have those big box limited editions. So those are actually together. And then just kind of the mass produced titles from the studio. And that's how my shelf is broken down.
And are your different formats like 4K and Blu-ray,
They're all together at this point. Being a little bit newer to having a 4K setup, I don't own that many titles on 4K as of right now.
So Bobby, my knowledge of your collection is that it's in several places. And some of those places are drawers.
What?
Oh, yes. Well, so...
But sort of similar to Sam, where it's kind of boutique-y organized?
The inception of the collection came when predominantly studios were pumping out their titles, right? Their home media departments, home entertainment, home video. And so it kind of started by distributor, just because there's an aspect to every distributor that can sometimes have a branding that looks very clean throughout a collection, right? So that's kind of where it started. But the TV where I watch movies, there's one in the main room. And so below it are movies, Blu-rays, I would say specifically Blu-rays that have slipcovers, because there's a lot of natural lighting in that area, light damage.
So you use the slipcover for defense?
Absolutely. That is all it is.
Sometimes Blu-rays or DVDs will come with, it's called a slipcover, and it's basically like a paper.
It's a sleeve that goes over the sealed packaging, oftentimes.
Some might say it's slipped over the actual packaging.
Yes.
And they're just made of paper, but like they are sought after because they're usually only on like the first pressing of a title. So I am now obsessed with having slipped covers from...
Why?
Because we're losers.
Because Sam fucking talked me into it one time, and now I can't stop thinking about it. I used to not care at all. I used to throw them away.
I did too, until I realized I needed them as a shielding, a protection. It keeps the heart of the matter safe.
I mean, I'm right there with you. I threw some away on like mass-produced Blu-rays for a long time because I was like, who cares? And it changed a little bit. I mean, this is all part of it, right? Like, I convinced you that slip sleeves were good for whatever reason. You are the one who convinced me.
You guys are all sick.
What was your rationale? What sold Kurt?
You know what it was, Bobby, is I was staring at my shelf one time, eating breakfast, and I looked at...
As one does.
I I was staring at the Scream/Shout Factory, and I was like, man, these titles look so good with the spines next to one another because they're all similar, except for half of these have slip sleeves and half of them don't. And I just had this moment in my head where I'm like, well, any one of these that has a slip sleeve that I don't have right now, I guess this is my new goal. And then I happened to go to LA like 2 days later, and it was explaining this to Kurt, and he's like, yeah, good point. And here we are.
Yeah, easy sell, huh, bud?
Yeah.
We were at our friend's place, and I was looking at their shelf, and I saw a couple slip sleeves that I have the movie, but I don't have the slip sleeve. And I was like ready to like take out my fucking wallet and be like, all right, how much for the sleeve? Just
you
the
should
sleeve.
go over there again and switch them out and see if they notice.
I think they would.
Yeah.
I respect these two.
They're on it like you guys.
Would you ever do that to me, Kurt? Like, would you go into one of my drawers and because you're really concerned about the disc condition, would you like sift through while I'm in the restroom?
Do you think I would do that to you? No.
No, I would have mad respect for you. I actually would trust you to do it because don't give me something I can't play, but you're like a little crazy in that, like, even just the semblance of
a scratch,
any defect.
Yeah.
You know, you could do it and I wouldn't notice. You just know how to handle my collection with care.
Wow. Can I have a key to your place?
Okay. Well,
I mean, you don't just have it in your drawers, right? Because in your bedroom, you have like a whole...
I have a case in my room, a shelf.
Yeah.
It's got glass over it. And that's where a lot of the box sets are, right? It's a lot of Criterion. It's a lot of,
the like big box sets, right? Like the Bergman, Fellini.
Oh, no, that one's in a drawer.
Oh, okay.
That one's in a drawer because it's so huge. We were talking about when the packaging is fun when it's extravagant physically, but it does make the cataloging and the storage of it a bit of a nightmare. And then I've got, a storage space with some plastic containers of DVDs overflow. And then I've got a couple of special boxes with like out of print titles that are particularly rare. And then you break it down into like, okay, so Criterion, right? Let's put all the Wim Wender movies together, Wim Wender movies. Let's put auteur sets, the thematic sets, old Hollywood.
So you have a bunch of little categories within Criterion then.
In every distributor.
But they're not alphabetical, they're not chronological.
Not necessarily, because they move so frequently. Nothing is ever stationary.
Okay.
It's always a shifting, because when you add or subtract, you got to
leave some breathing room.
Yeah, you have to.
That's actually one thing I'm very bad at. I'm like, I bought one new movie. Now I got 4 hours of work ahead of me to move everything over.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up changing your collection over to genre?
No. I think, okay, so mine is alphabetical by director last name. And then within a director, it's chronological. My 4Ks are alphabetical, and I just sort of started doing them that way because it's like a newer format. I haven't had them as long. At some point, I think I will do something better with that, but I don't like to mix them together. I like the 4Ks to be separate from the Blu-rays. But what's really crazy is I discovered that several of my titles that used to work fine had stopped working. And I think it was some kind of environmental problem at my last apartment. Like it was either too hot or I was abusing my little humidifier and these discs got destroyed. Or like someone came into my house with a fucking magnet and sabotaged my heart and soul. But point being, I had to like basically QC like 400 Blu-rays and see if they still worked. And I would do like a speed check where I'd fast forward through these movies and like they would shit the bed, 3/4 of the way through. And I could sort of weed out a lot of the bad ones that way. But some of them don't do that. If you're fast forwarding, you have to really watch the movie. So I have a section in my collection that is old Blu-rays that I have yet to rewatch, and they've yet to pass the QC test to stay in the permanent collection. I also keep every single disc I have outside of their actual cases. And so the minute I watch a movie, I take the case and I put the case in the library. And then I take the disc and I put it in a jewel case. That jewel case gets filed into a spreadsheet. So every jewel case is numbered. And then those jewel cases go into our little under the stairs wine cellar where Kimmy records this podcast, because that's the coolest, darkest, driest place in this house. And so when I want to watch a movie that I've already cataloged, I have to go into a spreadsheet, find out what number case it is, go crawl through a hole under our stairs, pull out whatever case the case is inside of. Oh, guys.
Yeah, this is why we're the only 3 people listening to this podcast.
Yeah. I have therapy tomorrow, and I think I'm just going to export this audio and just like, we'll just listen to it. I won't even have to talk tomorrow.
Just say, hey, figure this out. She's just going to be crying.
Kurt, what was the most devastating one?
It was like so many out of print criterions. It just like happened to be like Rosemary's Baby, Don't Look Now, Le Cercle Rouge. Thank God they like most of these have come back out. Like almost all of them, honestly, all the like really tragic ones have been re-released. At that time though, it was like Days of Heaven was not coming out again. Don't Look Now was not coming out again.
Yeah, when Paramount pulled their line, it was like
Criterion.
There was a quick panic. Like, how are the conditions of the ones I have? Do I have all of them? How do I get them before?
Remember Nashville was one, Bobby, and you offered to like give me yours and I couldn't take it from you.
The offer stands, bud. It really does.
I love you. You're very sweet.
Did that never get another release, Nashville?
Yeah, it did.
It did. It's on Paramount Presents.
Okay.
Yeah. So I keep all of my cases in the little room I'm recording, and I do think it'd be fun to categorize it by genre. I like the idea of genre just to kind of replicate the nostalgia of a blockbuster video, but it's fun to have your own collection because you can sort of create other genres. If I did that, I would definitely have a section of things that we would watch as a kid with my parents, or like I would have a section of things I liked in junior high and high school and college.
I started to separate my collection by genre one time. Whether you call it a problem or not, that's what I ran into, where I'm like, okay, well, I have, 10 subgenres in horror right now. And I have this pile over here that I know is going to be 12 more categories somehow. And so it almost got like too big. And I was about 2 hours into the project and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to turn it back.
I remember you texting me one time or calling me and being like, I'm gonna create a section that's just like animals on the loose.
Yeah. Giant crocodile does this.
Beast. Wasn't it like beast horror? I feel like I heard about this.
I was calling it Nature's Vengeance, I think, at the time.
I had movies where an animal played a central role in the melodrama of the movie. So like Sounder and The Yearling.
Wow,
and
Sounder.
National Velvet,
Oh my God.
or animal horror movies. Monster. Like, yeah, there's so many different ways to break it down.
If you're a collector, once your collection gets to a certain size, I feel like it's one of the fun things about engaging with it kind of as a whole.
It's the joys of especially thinking about what you want to watch instead of scrolling and kind of mentally noting, I could watch that. It's sort of pulling out and seeing displayed differently. There's a very great comfort in that.
I have often stood at my shelf and just stared at it.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
It's insane.
A marvel.
I think all 3 of you do that probably all at the same time without knowing it.
Did you guys watch anything this week?
On Wednesday, Criterion's Being John Malkovich.
Oh, cool.
Which had been a minute since I'd seen, and that movie is fucking awesome.
Tell us a little bit about Being John Malkovich if people haven't seen that.
It is a Spike Jonze directed...
Feature debut?
I believe so. And Charlie Kaufman wrote it.
Yeah.
Starring John Cusack, Cameron Diaz,
Catherine Keener, and
John Malkovich himself. It's a really wild kind of romantic drama, ultimately. Kurt, you were talking about last episode about Face Off and how all the characters believe the logic of the movie.
In Being John Malkovich, similarly, it's like not that different than reality, but kind of.
Yeah, it's like everything looks pretty much the same, but there's little things like there's an 8.5 floor in this building that John Cusack works in, where he ultimately finds a portal behind a file cabinet that allows you to literally see life through John Malkovich's eyes for 15 minutes.
Who's playing himself.
Yeah. And then after those 15 minutes, it kicks you out and just throws you on like the New Jersey Turnpike.
Yeah.
It's very weird. It's very fun. It's hilariously written.
Cameron Diaz is such a comedian. Like,
incredible.
She's so funny and she's so playful.
Yeah.
And she gets like the rhythm of comedy. I think she's just And Catherine Keener, who's just bonkers. The whole movie. What a good one.
So good.
Nice. Yeah, it's a great disc. 1999, one of the many 1999 classics.
Another reason why that may be the best movie year.
I watched Tremors.
Wow.
The 4K Arrow video release of Tremors. I don't know when that came out. A couple years ago, I think, at this point. I had not seen it yet, the new disc of it. I think Dune kind of put it on my mind. Underground Worms. Tremors is just the best. It's so funny. I always forget how funny it is.
I really think Tremors is one of the best monster movies of all time.
Tremors, I mean, if you haven't seen Tremors, it's about two kind of handymen played by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward. But it's basically about like underground sandworm monsters, not as big as the ones in Dune, but there's like 4 of these sandworms that are eating people and eating cars, and you can't like walk on the ground. Just like a classic late 80s, early 90s monster movie with a really, really funny script.
And an incredible Kevin Bacon performance.
He's really great, yeah. And just really cool effects. These worms are not CGI and practical filmmaking tricks, and it's great. Beautiful Blu-ray or 4K. Have you guys seen that on 4K? That Arrow?
I have.
I have their big box Blu-ray of it, but I haven't upgraded it.
Just like really colorful. It's like all in the daylight, you know, and that type of thing with HDR, high dynamic range, is something that the 4K discs can do, the technology of that. So it's just like the colors are super saturated and it has really beautiful grain. Like you feel like you're watching a really pristine film print of Tremors if you watch it that way. So highly recommend Tremors.
I love a monster movie or a horror movie that can take place in daylight and still give you some like thrills and chills in it.
Absolutely. And then I mentioned earlier, I was able to go on our friend's podcast and talk about Joyride, which is a movie that I was just obsessed with when I was 13 and have seen many, many times, but it was fun to revisit that Blu-ray. One thing that's really cool about Joyride is that on the DVD and on the Blu-ray, there are 4 alternate endings, and one of the alternate endings is like 29 minutes long.
Wow.
So like the entire third act is different. But I've never really seen that, and I remember discovering that on the DVD when it came out in 2001. And just being like, wait, what? Like, there's just like another half of the movie. So that's a really fun thing that you can only really see that way.
Who put that out?
Fox.
Let's hope for an Arrow or a Scream version of that. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Bobby.
With Poor Things coming out on Blu-ray this week, I pulled my Yorgos Lanthimos collection together and decided to watch The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh, yeah.
Which is...
I love that movie.
It's so weird.
I think that's the only one of his that I haven't seen.
You haven't seen that?
No, and everybody...
It's so
Oh, man.
funny.
Yeah.
It's so
good.
funny.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Nicole Kidman in it is just
She's sensational.
sensational.
And it's so dry. Alicia Silverstone's whole character.
And Barry.
Oh, yeah. Kind of right on the cusp of him being a household name. He's great.
It's like a breakout performance. You know, it's one of those special things where you sort of hadn't seen him before. I forget if Dunkirk came before or after that, but it was sort of just like there was no association to this kid, but he had such a specific vibe in that movie that you're just swept away by it.
And of course, now with Saltburn, he has ascended in pop culture in ways I would have never expected watching this movie, Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying it.
And he's going to be the Joker. I mean, he's on his way up.
He's a cool guy. Very, very good. The whole cast is great. It's a riot, and it's so uncomfortable and really upsetting.
Do you have a favorite Yorgos, Bobby?
I do love all of his movies. My favorite, I think, is The Favorite. But I also, because it wasn't written by him, it's almost like not his movie entirely, because you have Killing of a Sacred Deer, Lobster, Dogtooth, Alps. Those are all written by him.
Yeah, and they all have that kind of magical realism.
Not even magical, just like the rules of the world are very different than what they are for us. Thank goodness. But The Favorite is just, it's so funny and devastating.
Yeah.
And Poor Things is just, it's a hoot.
Couple announcements I wanted to cover today. The Criterion Collection announced their, June releases?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, June. Some good stuff. They're doing Blue Velvet in 4K, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 4K. Did I say Vegas right? Vegas?
Vegas. It's Vegas.
You did okay. There was like a blurring of both, but...
Bobby, do you say
I understand what is happening, Kurt.
For the listeners, Bobby and I are from Minnesota, and
It's Vegas.
it's Vegas.
No, it's Vegas.
Vegas.
It's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Hey, what's the breakfast food that's not a donut that has a hole in the middle?
Bagel.
It's a bagel.
Bagel.
It's a bagel.
It's a bagel.
It's a bagel.
It's a bagel.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas came out from who? Arrow Video's UK label. So it is already on 4K. Criterion is describing it as a new transfer that is supervised by Terry Gilliam, but define new, I don't really know. It might mean the same thing as this, but easier to find when it'll come out on Criterion Collection this June. The one I'm really excited about is the Wachowskis film Bound. Have you guys seen Bound?
I can't wait.
Oh, baby.
I love Bound.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite movies.
Bound is awesome.
It's awesome.
We got to do an episode.
I would love to.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw Bound at the New Beverly pretty recently, within the last year.
The first time you had seen it.
Yeah, and I knew it was the Wachowskis, and I knew it by title only, and that was enough to sort of get me there. Bound is this amazing kind of crime caper with Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly and Joe Pantoliano, directed by the Wachowskis, with so much style and like pretty contained locations. Takes place in Chicago. Just a blast. And it maybe was on Blu-ray, but not easily, like maybe not in the States. Or
They actually had a really lovely olive signature release.
was it out of print or something? Like, why didn't I get it?
It probably was out of print.
I think it's been hard to find for a while.
I've had this on DVD. Olive put it out a couple of times, but they did an Olive signature. And then I think they lost the rights at some point. Artisan put it out initially, the DVD.
Artisan. Wow. Blair Witch Project, right?
Hell yeah.
That's right.
Oh, also, Olive Films is done.
Yeah.
They have shuttered their doors.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn.
This is what their website reads. Olive Films extends our sincere gratitude to all of our customers and fans over the years. We are no longer adding titles or selling any of our products.
Sad. Well, I'm going to have to pull all those from the shelf and put them somewhere safe. A sealed plastic container, probably.
Bobby, anything else from the Criterion announcements? The Barry Jenkins or Fassbender? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, both of those. Actually, the other ones you mentioned, I'm like, yeah. The other two have not been released on, at least to my knowledge, physical media. Underground Railroad is sensational.
Was that an Amazon original?
Yeah, and it's Barry Jenkins. It's like 7 or 8 episodes. It's remarkable. The book is excellent, and the adaptation is just, it's stunning. The performances, the imagination, the world building, it's excellent. And then also Kirel, Fassbender, yeah.
Yes, I really want to see this.
It's like his last movie.
It's very like Kenneth Anger.
Yeah, it's very queer, but I've only read and seen trailers for the movie, so I'm thrilled because I love Fassbender.
Cool. What year roughly, do you know?
82, maybe? Early 80s?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, isn't Jean Moreau in it as well?
Yeah.
So is Franco Nero, who is the original Django.
And it was right before he died, Fassbender.
Yeah, the cover has a lot of Tom of Finland imagery to it.
Yeah.
It's great.
We will definitely be getting that one.
Anything else anybody's excited about that was announced?
Yeah, Vinegar Syndrome finally officially announced their 4K 2-pack of China O'Brien 1 and 2, which I have not seen, but they star the great Cynthia Rothrock, who's an incredible martial artist from the 80s and 90s, and I think these are the movies that really put her on the map. They put out a movie a couple years ago called Righting Wrongs, and that's the first time that I saw her. She blew me away. That movie's also awesome, but I'm excited to see her debut.
Okay, Bobby will be back at the end of the episode, but for now it's just going to be Sam and Kimberly and I. We're talking about 1988's remake of The Blob. The Blob was a 1958 sci-fi film starring Steve McQueen.
I think it's really what put him on the map.
Yeah, it's early for him for sure. And that is available as a Criterion Collection Blu-ray, The Blob, the original Blob, which is very, very good and a great disc.
It's so much fun. One of the all-time great opening theme songs.
Oh, amazing. So fun. I'm really sad, actually, that they don't play that at the end of this remake that we're going to talk about.
I agree.
Maybe they tried, but Okay, so briefly before we get into the Chuck Russell remake, The Blob for me holds a very special place in my heart. I was maybe 6 years old and I was with my parents and we were in a hotel room. We were all watching, some sort of TCM style program and they fell asleep and I kept watching and there was a double feature of Them. Them is a 1950s movie about radioactive giant ants. So it's black and white and it has these like huge animatronic ants like killing soldiers and it's amazing and it's very scary, especially if you're 6. And then The Blob came on and The Blob is in color, the original one. And basically the premise of The Blob is a meteorite comes down and from within this little asteroid comes this red jelly-like alien and it devours everything it can find. And as it does so, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was just this sort of early horror double feature that I saw and didn't really return to either of them, I don't think, until my 20s, but it was something I never forgot. So I have a real soft spot for the Blob franchise. But Sam, tell us about 1988's remake of The Blob, a movie that you introduced me to several years ago.
So this is like a classic 80s version of a 1950s monster movie. You have your bad boy, your quarterback, your cheerleader. There's kind of a love triangle happening between the three of them. There's clearly tension between the bad boy and the cheerleader. We don't know where that's going to lead. And at the beginning of the movie, the cheerleader and the quarterback are together. Of course, it's the 80s. But a meteor hits Earth. We see pretty quickly that there's this pink goop that falls off the meteor and attaches itself to a vagrant's hand. And the next time we see that vagrant, he is trying to saw his hand off. And that is kind of the inciting incident to the rest of the movie.
Yeah, the goop being the blob, and that blob keeps devouring anything and anyone in its path and getting bigger and bigger and bigger while this small town is trying to stop it.
Maybe explain like what happens to its victims when it gets them.
Yeah, when the blob attacks a victim, it essentially like dissolves them, but it will basically like wrap itself around the person.
It seems to take them in, but they're still kind of human while it's first consuming them. And then what I would assume is that it probably just like dissolves them with its stomach acids of some kind.
But it's just like a giant piece of Jell-O, essentially. It's very well made and looks disgusting, but it's just like getting eaten by a giant rolling piece of Jell-O.
I think one of the coolest parts of it is that it's not that you just would like suffocate in the Jell-O. It's that it like completely destroys you.
And it has like kind of tentacles, or it can like turn itself into tentacles. It sort of is like shape-shifty in some ways. And
it's very reminiscent of The Thing in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can kind of be whatever you need it to be when you need it to be that.
But not quite like, I mean, it doesn't become a person. It just becomes, it can fit into spaces however it needs to.
When it needs to, go under a locked door, it can fit in that tiny crack. But it's not forming a hand and opening the door that way.
Right. But yeah, it's kind of this like action slasher movie, but I just love how simple it is at the end of the day. It's just like, it's the fucking Blob. What do you want?
Yeah. It's 3 archetype characters in a small town, and they got to fight the Blob.
What do you think the Blob is?
Well, we know what the Blob is in this version. I don't want to spoil it by any means, but we'll just say that there's more of an answer, I guess, in the the answer's different. The answer's different in this remake than the original.
One of the cool things is that the design of the Blob, when it starts to kind of grow and consume more people and things around town, it's this great pink color. So you never really think of pink being like a threatening presence, and it just keeps growing, and it almost becomes more vibrant every time it like takes sustenance, which is cool because it's against the blacks of the night and the town and everything else. There's just always this glowing pink orb.
It looks kind of like an organ or like a chewed up piece of gum, or like how would you describe the way it looks? It has a lot more detail to it in this remake than it does in the original, but
if you're familiar with it at all, it looks exactly like the Pokemon Ditto without a face. Again, it's 58 compared to 88, so that's 30 years of difference regardless. But on top of that, the 58 version is like the Blob is like scary, but it never seems that threatening. The way that they just start killing characters in this movie.
In the new one?
Yeah. It really
remake.
makes you think, like, you're like, oh man, it's fair game at this point. It's open season. Anyone can die at any point for any reason. And this is a unstoppable killing machine.
Yeah.
I think one of the other cool things in terms of the effects is that, you know, this is Chuck Russell's second movie, and his first movie was A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, which is pretty much the only sequel worth watching in that franchise.
Okay.
There's a lot of cool effects in that movie, and it seems like that was really a training ground to get him to be able to direct the stunts in this movie. And I think it pays off. I mean, there's a little like miniature work that you can tell it's miniatures, especially with actors in the foreground and everything. But
Yeah.
it looks incredible.
And even that stuff like has a charm to it that's not CGI. At least that's sort of, I think, both of our preference. We'd rather see a miniature and know it's a miniature than just have it be CGI.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, you mentioned this, but I love, I don't, we won't spoil things, but like so many characters die in this movie. Like no one is safe. Not everybody dies, but a lot of people do. And it's really exciting once you start realizing like, oh shit, this is not playing by traditional rules necessarily.
Well, and the script is Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont, who, you know, we all know from all the Stephen King adaptations that he did. But I think one of the things, he was the original showrunner on The Walking Dead. And I think one of the things that turned him on to The Walking Dead so much is how quickly Robert Kirkman, the writer of that comic, would just kill characters off. And I mean, you really see that when the shit hits the fan in this movie, it's wild how quickly people start dropping.
And not everybody's death is like given the sort of emphasis you would expect by the size of the character that they played within the story. Sometimes people just drop dead. Sometimes people are killed or you just see their bodies suddenly and you're like, oh my God, they're gone.
The first time that I watched this movie, I was really taken aback by that. And I don't think I loved it, but as I've seen it more and more, and I've been lucky enough to see this movie on 35 millimeter in a theater. I've watched this 4K twice. I've seen it on Blu-ray. When Shout announced that they were going to be re-releasing it, well, actually, they did a collector's edition on Blu-ray a couple years ago.
Yeah, yes, exactly. This is a 4K version of a disc that already existed from them.
And I was happy that I never upgraded my Twilight Time to their Blu-ray. So when this one got announced, it was a very easy sell for me personally.
Yeah, it's just sort of like a film, I think, that is better than you expect it to be. I remember you telling me to see it, and I wasn't very interested because I knew that it was remade from a classic 50s monster movie, and I was hesitant. But I think it's just really well written and really well cast, and the way that they really dial up the gore and the shock.
25 minutes into the movie when the first character drops dead or whenever it is, immediately the way that scene is done and the way that the movie ramps up after that, I knew I could just stop this right now and go buy it. It got me. It hooked me so immediately. I didn't think it was going to be violent. I thought it was going to be pretty cheesy. I'm like, who gives a shit about an 80s version of the Blob? But much like Cronenberg's The Fly.
Same DP.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Mark Irwin, I believe is his name? Yeah. Much like that movie, he took a very silly Vincent Price 50s kind of, spook movie and turned it into this visceral, gross, intense. I mean, both of them, like the Blob feels wet the entire time and like body parts are falling off of it. It's shooting out of, storm drains, this and that. Like it's gnarly. I mentioned to a friend that we were going to do the Blob on the show, and he was like, I saw that movie when I was 7 years old. It was way too early. I still can't really be around drains, man. That movie freaks me out. Like, okay.
There's a whole subplot in this movie about kids like seeing a horror movie probably too young. That's funny.
It's great. I mean, it shouldn't work the way that it does, but it does, and it really, really works.
We don't have to go too deep, I don't think, into this one, but it's a movie we both love, and I think I had the chance to finally check out this new 4K of it, and it's something I always like to recommend to people if they're into horror movies, especially ones with some humor and some violence, gore that is never like too traumatic, I guess maybe is the word. It's not like you're not going to have a bad time.
This is a really like easy entry level horror movie. if you're not a huge horror fan, I think this can be one that you can turn on with friends and have a good time watching.
It's as much of an action movie as it is a horror movie.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, it's really sort of like a monster chase, Jurassic Park-y kind of vibe.
But I would like to highlight that this Scream Factory 4K also comes with a Blu-ray of the movie, which I think Kurt already said, but it is loaded with interviews with people who worked on the movie. There's 2 with Chuck Russell, the director. I know there's one with Shawnee Smith, who plays the lead. There's a lot of interviews on this disc, so if that's stuff that's important to you, I would definitely pick it up.
I wish this disc featured more of a glimpse behind the scenes to all this effects work, especially. There is a 30-minute special feature that shows some of the tests they were doing with prosthetics, but it's kind of shot on VHS, and there's no audio to it beyond score from the film. You don't get much insight beyond some visuals. So for as much supplemental material as there is, I do kind of wish there was more of a produced BTS. There are a couple things that happen in this movie, and no matter how many times I see it, unless I were to go frame by frame, which kind of ruins it in my opinion, there are a few things that happen that I go just oh my God, how did they just do that? What I know what I just story-wise what I just saw, but what did I actually just see?
Well, it's cool.
Did they kill that person? What just happened?
What's cool about in the interview that Chuck Russell gives, he talks about how when they were setting up the movie, it was going to be a lot of reverse shots of the Blob. But then in the actual final product, I believe he said there's only 2 actual reverse shots of it. So they just found different ways to do it.
That's cool, because I was sort of wondering how much of it was reversed.
He said as well that the prosthetics and plastic and everything that they made the Blob out of had real heft and weight to it, which I think is cool because it doesn't make it seem like it's kind of cotton candy or a cotton ball floating around the stage. It's there's actual density to it, which makes it scarier.
Yeah, and it has veins and bubbles, and it's
such a good design.
It's really cool. So yeah, personally, I would definitely recommend this disc, and especially just checking out this movie if you've never had the pleasure.
During the time, I'm not sure if it was a financial success or not, but I looked up some reviews.
It was not.
It was not. That's a bummer. I looked up some reviews. I have a collection of books that have old horror movie reviews in them, and it seems like some of them were fairly positive.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it was a financial failure.
Couldn't keep Chuck down though. Now with The Mask coming later.
Starring Jim Carrey, which people probably know. Incredible movie. And then after that, he did Eraser with our beloved Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Let's also not forget that Chuck Russell went on to direct The Scorpion King as well.
Oh yeah, people love that movie.
I am not one of them, but yeah, I think people like it a lot.
There's a sequel to the original. Did you know that? There's The Return of the Blob, I think is the title. Also known as The Son of the Blob, I think in some countries. I read that. So the Blob had a son.
Well, we all thought the Blob was sexless. It apparently is not.
I think the Blob also had a daughter, and it's our cat Ripley.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Bobby is back, and we are going to put some wishes out into the physical media universe. Are you guys ready?
Can't wait.
It's getting spooky. It's getting spooky.
I wish for Wrist Cutters a love story on any format other than DVD. I wish.
Little Children on Blu-ray or 4K.
Ooh, that's a good one. I wish. Bobby, I'm going to piggyback on yours and say In the Bedroom from Criterion in either Blu-ray or 4K. We wish. Wow. Good ones. Wrist Cutters. Tell us about that, Sam. I remember that. That came out when we were in college.
Yeah, it was, I think, one of the first movies I ever saw at the Chicago International Film Festival, which was great. Based on a short story by Edgar Corrett called Neller's Happy Campers. It's a story about anybody who kills themselves. They go to this weird purgatory, and while 3 characters are in this purgatory, they meet a kind of messiah who thinks he can transport people back to the world of the living.
Shannon Sossaman, the kid from Almost Famous.
Yeah, Patrick Fugit. And the third person is played by one of my favorite character actors, Shea Wiggum.
Right. Yeah. Early Shea Wiggum, too. I mean, just in terms of his kind of pre-Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah, I think it's the first time I'd ever seen him. It's a lot of fun. It's like, it's a kind of a dark story that's done like really well and very funny and very dry.
Yeah, it's dark, but it's like aesthetically bright.
Yeah, the world, the purgatory that they live in is like very bland and kind of looks a lot like the Midwest with just like rolling fields of emptiness. It's a really cool movie that's been hard to find for a long time. So let's hope.
I saw that down at Amoeba the other day on DVD. That's funny.
Fun, yeah.
Bobby, I'm going to go first for chronological sake. In the Bedroom is Todd Field's directorial debut, and Todd Field was originally an actor. People may know Todd Field from Eyes Wide Shut. He plays Nick Nightingale in Eyes Wide Shut, and Nick Nightingale is the pianist who is an old friend of Tom Cruise's character and is the person responsible for getting Tom Cruise's character into the sex party. But Todd Field wanted to be a director, and Tom Cruise, in fact, was like a big supporter of his in getting this first film In the Bedroom produced. In the Bedroom stars Tom Wilkinson, the great late Tom Wilkinson, Sissy Spacek, and
Marissa Tomei.
And this is an intense family drama that takes place in like Maine or something, like in sort of a East Coast fishing town. I don't want to tell you anybody what the plot of this movie is. I had the privilege to see this on film last year at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica, and it had basically just been something I knew was supposed to be great. I did not see it when it first came out. I think I was a little young. But I had no idea what it was about, and I went to see it in the theater, and it shook me. It's just an incredible screenplay. Todd Field is one of our great directors, in my opinion, and does not work often enough. His latest film was Tar, the incredible Tar, but his follow-up to In the Bedroom is also not available on Blu-ray. Bobby, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Todd Field, man. And Little Children, his sophomore effort. It's hard to say it's an effort because he hits it out of the park every time. And it's based on a novel by Tom Perrotta, who did Election and the book that inspired the HBO series, The Leftovers. He's just a really interesting satirist and humorist, but also looks at very heavy topics. And Little Children is this suburban melodrama satire, sort of in the vein of American Beauty. And the screenplay is an excellent adaptation of the book. Tom Perrotta co-wrote it, but it stars Patrick Wilson, Kate Winslet, and Jennifer Connelly. And I can only imagine that the original cut of this movie could have been close to 3 hours long with more scenes with the different characters. It was up for 3 Oscars. It's really thrilling, and it's sexy, and it's really funny too. And the sex scenes are among the best in cinematic history, I would say.
They're hot.
This movie's incredible.
And yeah, both of these, for whatever reason, are they New Line, both of them?
No, Miramax was In the Bedroom.
Oh,
and I remember
Miramax.
having that on DVD when it first came out in like 2001. They both came out on DVD in their respective years. And
yeah,
right now In the Bedroom just hasn't been upgraded because of the Miramax,
Sure. Yeah.
It does seem like they're kind of sitting there right for Criterion to pick up.
Yeah, the licensing for those movies, I don't really know. Warner Brothers would have the New Line, but Criterion's been doing a lot with New Line that I've been impressed with. So I hope But here's the thing too. This is why they won't work for Criterion. I think we have to think about this differently. We're aiming too high. Todd Field, he is a director who does not want added supplemental materials for his movies. He's kind of like a Woody Allen.
Interesting.
So in that case, I just don't think Tar has nothing. In the Bedroom has nothing. No theatrical trailers, nothing. Bare bones.
Yeah, I'm looking at Tar. It does not have anything.
No, there's nothing.
I didn't realize that.
And I think that's what the best we're going to get for a physical media release. He will approve, I'm sure, a transfer, but we're not getting a director's cut. We're not getting anything outside of the movie. So,
sure.
Criterion is
They went in the closet, though. Him and Kate Blanchett. They went in the Criterion.
Oh,
and when they did that, I was like, oh my God, what's coming? What's happening? Why are they there?
Here we come.
He surprises me all the time. But historically, his releases have not been robust in their offerings.
Thank God we got Tar in 4K, though. That was so surprising. That made me so happy. Okay, that's it for our show. Thank you once again for listening. Head over to Too Scary Didn't Watch if you want to hear me talk for a long time about Joyride. If you found our show from Too Scary Didn't Watch, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. We're happy to have you. We will be back next week. Thank you to Patrick Laban for our music. Thank you to Kimberly for producing. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, boyos.
Thanks, friends.
Bye bye. Mwah.